Welcome, all hunters, anglers, trappers, and shooters, to the only fish and wildlife conservation podcast that goes behind the scenes of the business of conservation, the Connecting with Conservation podcast. Our podcast is hosted by John Gassett from the Wildlife Management Institute and Jim Cucaruto of the Outdoor Stewards of Conservation Foundation. John and Jim will talk with experts from all sectors of the conservation arena about their passion for conserving the great outdoors. So please welcome our hosts of the Connecting with Conservation podcast, John and Jim.
Welcome to another episode of Connecting with Conservation. I'm your co-host, John Gassett from Wildlife Management Institute. I'm here with my co-host, Jim Cucaruto. Jim?
Oh, hey, good morning or good afternoon or good evening, wherever we are right now. But it's a good day for sure because I learned something new the other day, and I want to share that with everybody here. You know, I've been talking about conservation for 15 years and went to the SHOT Show the other day and met our guest, and he was telling me a story about how conservation is funded in a way I did not know. So I'm excited to bring our guest on and have him talk a little bit about hopefully something you'll learn about today too. So Sean Cross from iSportsman, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Hey, good afternoon, gents. Thanks for having me on. Really excited to talk with you guys about this as well as your audience. So I'm the chief contracting officer here for iSportsman. We specialize with a outdoor software as a service. And what we do in particular is we maximize Sykes Act permit sales for the Department of Defense. We are currently deployed across 56 military bases, and we manage almost 12 million acres of land. And what Sykes Act does is it allows people to hunt on military bases, not something that a lot of people know about. And it's a huge, huge access point for folks. As you guys probably know, the Department of Defense has quite a bit of land. So we're able to bring that to the public as well as help current service members, veterans, and their families to spend time in the outdoors.
And that matches your background, right? You're a serviceman?
That's correct. So currently, previously did 18 years in Navy Special Operations as a Master Explosive Ordnance Disposal Technician. Had the time of my life doing it and miss it every day.
Did you grow up outdoors, doing a little hunting and fishing and
I
shooting?
did. So I grew up in Colorado originally. Lots of fishing in my background, actually, and my family wasn't too big into hunting. And later on in life, I went out and did that on my own. So currently with iSportsman and from my military service in Mountain, Virginia, and there's a lot of opportunities out here, but man, I gotta say it's a whole different flavor of hunting out here compared to out west.
So, Sean, you hit on something I've tried over my career to reinforce with folks, and a lot of people just still don't grasp it, but military bases, the military pretty much they're the third largest public landowner in the country. And you know, folks think about Forest Service and BLM and Park Service and all that, but the military, you know, combined acreage under the military bases is huge, and they're mandated under the Sykes Act to write resource management plans and to implement those plans to manage wildlife species. So it's really good to have a connection between the access for those places and the third largest landowner in the country. So tell us a little bit about how that system works, where you sell the permissions and access to get to the bases.
So the plans that you're talking about are the integrated natural resource management plans, or INRMs. So what those do is they show the resource management and follow the North American model of conservation, right? So I'm sure that you and your audience are broadly familiar with that, so I won't get into the details with it. So within there, what the requirement of the INRIP is to balance things against the Sykes Act as well as the military mission. Obviously, there's some military areas that you're just not going to be allowed to let civilian populations in for a variety of reasons. But that has to be justified. It's not something that's granted that it's secured. So once that INRIP is through and processed, right, it's quite a process to create one, and it has to be validated at several levels. So once that goes up, it then falls into the Sykes Act. Now, what the Sykes Act does, and this is the great part with the conservation piece, and I'm sure we'll talk about it here in a little bit, but any revenue that's generated by the Sykes Act, that doesn't just go to the base. Where that goes is it goes to the natural resources management for the bases. So it's not something that gets sucked up into a budget and disappears from dealing with public money. It's supposed to be as transparent as possible, and I think we can all agree that that's not necessarily the case when you try to look into things. But in this case, it has to stay in there. So any of the permits that you buy through any Sykes Act service like iSportsman, that immediately gets reabsorbed back into conservation.
Awesome, awesome. Well, Wildlife Management Institute, as a conservation nonprofit, we actually provide that service. We write in-ramps for bases, and I've took the lead on several of those. But I've always wondered, when you write those recommendations, and here's what you should, what you should do. This is the other side of it. Is that this is where the implementation happens. The money flows back into conservation for those bases, and it's just good to see the other side of the equation.
Well, John, I can say that I don't envy you for having to write those in-rems. Not something that, I mean, most people don't like writing contracts, but I'm okay with that. But in-rems are something that I would never want to touch. So more power to you there, brother.
Well, I think it's a need, and it's something that needs to be done right. The military bases need it done right, and it's a benefit to conservation when that's done. So,
Absolutely, and there's been quite a bit of focus on there, as I'm sure you know. So there's been several bases that have showed up in the news on the natural resources and conservation side for the wrong reasons, and that's really spurred the DoD to drill down on this. Now, if you look at it, what that's done is it's actually opened things up more to the civilian population so that they can get in there and really explore the natural resources that our Department of Defense has.
This is blowing my mind. I've been hunting for 40 years, and I just learned this today. It's really awesome. And I'm in the Northeast, and I looked on your iSportsman's website, and you got an easy map to identify where you can go. And West Point. I could have hunted West Point.
Absolutely.
That'd be my one way to get in, other than going to see a football game. So tell me a little bit
exactly
about
it. Yeah,
the process.
so the process, and since you're in the northeast area, there's actually quite a bit in there that folks aren't familiar with. And public land is, I don't want to say few and far between, but it's difficult to find certainly in those areas. So a prime example for this is, let's say, either West Point or Quantico, right? Quantico is not too far from the DC area, and there's lots of folks there who want to get outside and do some recreation. So what'll happen is you go onto the iSportsman portal that's associated with that base, right? You say you go to the Marine Corps base Quantico website. You're going to apply there. You're going to enter your information, and then what'll happen is the military will vet you and ensure that you can get onto you can get onto the base and there's not a security risk or something else associated with that. Once that's done, then you can yeah, yeah, exactly. So once that's done, that allows you to purchase a permit. You purchase the permit for an area, a day, and whatever you want to do. So in the case of some of our bases, it's very restrictive based off of their NREMP. In other places, it's quite open, and it's also in partnership with the state and federal legal requirements as well. Once that happens, you go ahead and purchase your permit. You have your permit. You can print it out if you like, or you can keep it on your phone. And then you go to the area. The day that you're there, you check into the area online, conduct whatever business you want. And then the nice thing with our software is once you have a successful hunt, you complete all of your information regarding that hunt right there on our website. So you don't have to stop by a game check station. You don't have to do any of that. It's already completed. You get your harvest information, you check out of the area, and you go about your business. So not only does this make things easier on the natural resources side, so our big thing is we want to get the biologists and the ecologists back out into the field where they belong, right? Nobody signed up for that job to sit behind a desk and fill out hunting tags. So we want to get them back out in the field. And we also want to make the process for the end user as easy as possible. So this also allows for range control and other parts and pieces to be automated as well. So if you're going to a military base, and if you have any military experience, God knows the military loves safety briefs, right? Well, we also know in this day and age, just like if you get a shiny new iPhone, you're going to scroll down to the bottom and hit, I agree to the terms and conditions. Now, with iSportsman, one of our big things here is that we will take those safety briefs and other parts and pieces and force you to acknowledge it and sign off on it, right? So it ensures that range control has the safety factors there. And that way, if something does happen, you can say the range control or the Clio or whoever is running the program on the administrative side can say, no, you've agreed to this and gone forward. So our big piece here is we want to ensure that everybody is safe. We don't want to interfere with the military mission, and we want to make sure that the hunters and fishermen are getting what they need out of it. Now, to that end as well, let's say that all of a sudden you have a bunch of artillery that's moving through a hunting area. Our system will also generate a text message to the hunter that says, hey, you have people coming through, please remove yourself and force that check out. So there's a lot of checks and balances that go into it, but our goal with the whole thing is to make it super easy for the administrators and for the customers and end users. We want it to be as simple of a process as possible because there's a wide age range associated with hunting, and so we want to ensure that that process is smooth for everybody.
Yeah, I love that. You said you manage 56 bases and 12 million acres. Now, is that for everything from small game, squirrel, and waterfowl,
Jim,
and big game?
it is absolutely everything. Everything from fishing permits to pine needle harvest to big game. And once folks start using the iSportsman system, what we hear a lot is, well, can we add this and can we add this? And our answer is always sure, because ultimately what this is, it's another permit type. Um, so we found that the pine needle harvest was something that people were interested in because it helped change the acidity in their soil. And so in order to recoup that back into the natural resources, they lumped it in under the Sykes Act so that those permits go back into the programs and support that. Uh, Large game, small game, anglers, all those things are going to be based off the state and federal applicable guidelines for the area. So obviously, if you have, you can't hunt a particular species in an area, it doesn't mean you can hop on the military base and do it. Um, but it's all right there, right in front of you. As soon as you create your profile for iSportsman, it'll show you what's available and what tags are available.
So, Sean, I really, that's great information, especially for people looking to gain access on military bases. But I have another connection you may not have made with your sort of one-stop shop and being able to check your game in and leave the base without going to a check station or whatever. It's kind of funny, and I'll tell it on myself. But when I was director of Fish and Wildlife in Kentucky, I got drawn to the Bluegrass Army Depot. Now, this was pre-gas removal, so all the armaments were still there in the igloos. But so you can imagine extensive training and not training, but safety briefings and all that stuff just to get to go on this hunt. Went with my deputy director, who's a fantastic turkey hunter, and we're actually sitting on an igloo. Called up a nice bird. I shot it, ran down to it. It was the biggest bird I'd ever shot. So I'm gonna have this thing mounted. Well, when I ran down to it, it's flopping. I step on its tail, and it flops and pulls 4 feathers out of the tail. I was like, all right, good taxidermist can fix this. So I get him secured, put him in my bag, and we head back, get in the truck. Well, Hank hasn't taken his bird yet, so we drive down to another spot. And he goes, well, I'm going to hop out and walk down this road. You just sit here in the truck. So I cut the radio on, kick back, and he comes around to my window, and he says, you might want to get your bird out of the back. It's kind of warm out here, and that black bedliner is going to heat him up. So I get out, and I'm looking around. There's no shade, so I just tuck him underneath the back of the truck, get back in, take me a little nap. Well, Hank calls an hour later and says, I'm ready, come get me. I cranked the truck up, forgetting that I had the bird underneath it, backed up, turned around, went to get Hank, picked him up. I'm coming back, and he goes, did somebody shoot a bird right there where you were parked? There's feathers everywhere. And I'm like, oh no, that's my turkey.
Oh, no.
I ran over him with 2 tires. After I'd stepped on him, pulled his feathers out, it broke both spurs off, pretty much broke every bone in his body. And I had to go to the check station with the military biologist there and my biologists who were working in concert with them and show them, here's the director of Fish and Wildlife, and this is what a bird looks like that I just killed. I wished I'd have had a way to check that bird out remotely online and snuck out of there with nobody ever knowing it. It was
John,
embarrassing.
we could definitely save you from the embarrassment of having to show somebody what you've done, but I think you're going to have to live with that one regardless.
You can't fix stupid,
No,
can you?
and it's okay. It happens to the best of us. But oh man,
Yeah, real-time online check-in would have helped me back then.
I think it might have. Yeah.
Yeah.
Did they take pictures?
Anyway. Oh, yes.
Good.
Yeah, I had pulled the bird up for them. They took pictures. Yeah, it was a mess. I mean, it really looked like it'd been run over about an 18-wheeler, and I salvaged what I could from it, but no mount, of course.
Oh, of course.
I, I saw again on the iSportsman's website that Fort Knox, Kentucky is one that you manage too. So I'll ask John, do you work with the DNRs, like the Kentucky DNR, to help when they get that money back from the licenses? Do the DNRs help manage the lands?
So in some cases they do. It's really a case by case basis. And in some of the areas where there's more state involvement, we're more heavily on that side. So a lot of our contracts reside either with Air Force Civil Engineering Center or IMCOM, Army IMCOM. Now there are smaller disparate bases, and typically if somebody has a lot of development or interaction with the DWR, it's better to put them on an individual contract so that we can ensure we have all the checks and balances in place. Now, when you're looking at that, as we develop the website for the portal for the customer, as we're doing that, that's where all those parts and pieces come into account. So we'll take all the DWR regulations as well as the service specific regulations and the DoD regulations and incorporate it in there so that we ensure we capture everything.
So, how much? If you do you have an estimate? Excuse me, of the total number of acreage that y'all have under management where you issue permits for, or?
So it's just under 12 million acres right now.
And then I think when we were talking at Shot, you said it was a couple $1 million a year in license fees that you generate and then give back to the people.
So across our 58 bases right now, in 2024, we generated $3.4 million worth of revenue that goes um, back into the natural resources. The average permit price for the military bases, it hovers right around $30, and that changes based off the region and what's going on. So for some of the specialty hunts and things like that, the permit price will go up, but that's $3.4 million is captured directly in there. And the nice thing with the iSportsman software is that we integrate directly with pay.gov. So iSportsman never touches any of those funds. It goes directly into that natural resources accounting.
That's cool. Would you have any idea of a specific project that those funds were used, on some of these bases, or that's outside your scope?
So I do have some ideas. So a lot of it goes into, so number one, research is the big thing that comes up. So as I'm sure you guys are aware, birds, bats, and bees are the big things that really gets natural resources folks going. So there's been a lot of research with that that's been conducted with those funds. The other big piece is upkeep, right? So basic maintenance is happening on trails, structures, pavilions, and other parts and pieces. There have been, in some cases, conservation efforts for wetlands as well as forested areas that are under protection for one reason or another that help with that. The other part, too, with the natural resources is there is some interbreeding when it comes to being used for area remediation. So if you think UXO, so unexploded ordnance, as my background and as a explosive ordnance disposal guy, that's something that we pay attention to quite a bit. And there's actually a piece in our software called Hazards that allows people to report UXO as well as wildlife contact or conflict in other parts. So area remediation is also a huge component to this. There's plenty of things out there on military bases, and the areas that folks are allowed into are cleaned up, but even at the best of times, sometimes things are missed.
And I know you said, on top of now supporting conservation by making it easier for access and making it easier for getting that money back to do conservation work, iSportsman, I think you said, also kind of works with a few nonprofits and helps out, conservation that way as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So we're involved with the Congressional Sportsmen's Foundation. We have a fantastic relationship with those folks so that we can stay aware. That's the biggest piece right now is staying aware and ensuring that the end users are aware as well. So we're very firmly an apolitical organization, but we find that a lot of folks that are in the hunting and fishing outdoor space are not aware of some of the things that are challenging their rights. So we like to partner with them and put that information out there. So we have a weekly newsletter that goes out to end users who opt into that. We also have a quarterly newsletter that goes to our system admins Now with that, we take any information that we can get, and we put it in there so that folks maintain the awareness of anything that might challenge or open up their rights to certain things.
Yeah. Well, you mentioned the, sort of the three key groups of species for the military bases to manage, the birds, bats, and bees. And, we struggle with that as resource managers, convincing, the more consumptive user groups, your deer hunters and your bird hunters that, they want to see that money going towards game species. But the fact is that checks the boxes for the military, gets them on the things they're required to do. And bird management, lots of bird management and bee management, bat management is also good, game species management. So there are species of bats that like active timber harvest. They want dead snags, and they want tree bark on the ground and all that. And you get that with active timber management, which is also good for deer and turkeys. But, trying to get the box checked saying we're doing deer and turkey management is a lot tougher in many cases than saying we're managing for Indiana bats. But we still get the end product for the users is the same. It's more deer, more turkeys, higher quality hunts and that sort of thing.
Yeah, and I'm sure from your position with your organization, you've seen it quite a bit. Is people have their own little niche that they'd like to see with conservation, but it's difficult to see the holistic view with it, right? And John, I think you're completely right when you say as long as you achieve the end goal, and does it really matter how we got there, right? As long as everything's ethically and morally sound, I don't think that there's a challenge with that. And so being able to see it from this side of things, seeing the revenues that are going back into that, I think it's a huge step forward. And also using, speaking with organizations such as yourself and Congressional Sportsman's Foundation, we're able to take that conservation message and push it forward. And it certainly helps with the optics when you're looking at folks who don't hunt or don't fish.
Sure. Yeah, and I wouldn't intend just to cast dispersions on the hunting side, because what's even more difficult is to convince the birds, bats, and bees people that, hey, we're doing deer management on this property, but it's also good for birds and bats. They don't, at least hunters can sort of see the connection, but the folks on the other side, a lot of times they're like, no, we want work specifically on, eastern bumblebees or whatever. And it's like, well, but we're managing for turkeys, in a field situation. We're managing the same plant species. It doesn't matter to the bird or to the bat or the bee, So, well, we appreciate that. Sean, what's on the horizon for iSportsman? What do you see is going on in the next 5 years there for what's happening with access to military bases and that sort of thing?
Absolutely. So we want to open this up as much as possible, right? So that's dealing with the base environmental, particularly going back to the in-rim discussion, right? There's some things or some bases that have in-rims that are fairly restrictive when it comes to outdoor recreation, that are not necessarily due to a military mission. It might be because there's other conservation efforts that are taking precedence in there. But really what we'd like to see is we'd like to open this up, right? We want people to enjoy the public lands and take advantage of them as much as possible. So we're always adding new places and new installations. We also have on the non-government side, on the commercial sector, we also offer a product called iSportsman ARX. And what that does is it helps hunt clubs and landowners manage their lands more effectively, whether that be from a conservation piece or an access management piece. We try and keep this as open as possible. So we saw a good thing going on the DoD side, and we're continuing to grow that, but we're also moving into the private sector as well with the ARX platform.
Okay, all right. Have y'all, I know you primarily focus on sort of the military bases and the military mission, but have you looked at other, there are other federal land agencies who have to have, in some cases, they have a permit system or access system or whatever. Do you work with those in states as well, not just federal? Yeah.
So absolutely, that's something that we're in discussions with constantly. Now we do have some that are non-DoD lands associated with that. They're still under federal lands, so Fish and Wildlife. We've also had conversations with Department of Energy and other federal agencies out there that have quite a bit of land. It turns out that the government owns quite a bit of it. So yes, we're always discussing that, and we're always trying to provide the easiest way, again, to get the ecologists and biologists back out into the field and to help people enjoy the lands of this great country.
Yeah. So I was thinking specifically about things like, I know I've hunted recently in Wyoming. They have, their Access Yes program, which is a private land access program, that you sign up for. And I can't remember whether there was a paid permit or not, but there was a set of guidelines you had to go through, and then it got you access to additional property. And like I said, those landowners want to know, how many people are using it and kind of what kind of impact it is. And there's data that has to be recorded for that. But it certainly opens up a lot more opportunity, for that state anyway, that they wouldn't have otherwise. And
Yeah, absolutely. So Wyoming's a prime example of that. I would say that Utah is also a very good example of things like that. So, and implementing something like iSportsman on or in areas like that, it does two things really. So number one, it shows your access, right? It's a big thing, especially, with private landowners. They want to know who's coming or going, even if they are part of a program. So it gives you the surety with that. Now, on the wildlife management side, it shows you what the pass through is, right? So that's a huge issue that's taken into account. So even if you don't harvest anything, having massive amounts of intrusion into an area can cause difficulty. So there's different ways to manage that, obviously, and I'm sure that you guys are far more familiar with that. But it can be something as simple as shifting a route, right? So saying that access isn't granted on, from south to east. You have to go from south to northeast, or whatever the case may be, and that's something that we deal with quite a bit. So on our partnership side, we also work very closely with Natural Resources Institute so that we can assist federal and state areas with things like that.
Cool, cool, cool. That's and one of those access issues. I think at least, well, it's becoming everywhere. It used to be more of a Western issue because all the public land is the impact from UTVs, ATVs. It's well, I was out there this past fall elk hunting on public land, and we happened to start on September 1, Labor Day weekend, and you couldn't breathe for the side by sides and ATVs and horses and everything. No chance of getting an elk for a few days, but.
Well, as a power sports enthusiast, and an outdoor guy, I can see both sides of that coin. They're certainly fun, but man, it's a lot more disruptive than you initially think.
And I'm both as well. And my other quick story with Wyoming is I did take an elk about 5 years ago there on an access yes piece of property, and of course it was walk-in only. And I was thinking the whole way packing, out. I left my dad to cut the elk up, and I was coming out to get all our gear, and I'm like, man, this is gonna be a lot of trips back and forth packing this thing out. And then I saw the little sign in the fading dusk there at night that said ATV access on 2 tracks for game retrieval only. And I'm like, thank you, Jesus. drove my 4-wheeler right to the elk, loaded him up.
I don't know how much you've seen it, but I became aware from a friend of mine who's an avid hunter out west. One of the big things now is to have a helo pick up the animal for you. And so apparently I broke my back a few times in service, so unfortunately rucking isn't in the cards for me anymore. So I'm looking at doing an elk hunt later this year out west, and I'm like, man, I wonder if they do anything with veterans out there to come and get a veterans elk, because the thought of having to figure out how to get an elk out of the backcountry is a bit more daunting now than it used to be. So I'm all about taking that helo and getting it out of there.
The funniest retrieval I saw was I oversaw the elk restoration in Kentucky, and one of my friends was guiding a hunter in one of our early hunts. They shot an elk at the bottom of this big hollow field on a strip mine, and my buddy got the mining company to bring a big track hoe down. So they picked this elk up with a track hoe, and not a small track hoe. This is a mining track hoe. It's huge. And I got a picture at one time of this elk hanging from the bucket as they brought this up the haul road. I'm like, no, that's the way to get game out of the field.
Yeah, absolutely. Hey, work smarter, not harder.
Yep. Well, Sean, this has been fascinating, great information. Certainly appreciate everything that you and iSportsman do. Can you tell us a little bit about how we can find more information about your organization?
Yeah, absolutely. So the best place to find information about us is if you go to iSportsmanusa.com. All one word. That'll give you all of our locations and tell you where you can go hunt anywhere that we're deployed.
Fantastic. Well, we appreciate you coming on, spending some time with us. Look forward to using your system to access the military bases and get after some game in the future. And thanks for being here, Jim. As always, thank you for co-hosting with me. And to our listeners and viewers, please watch our podcast, watch our other ones, subscribe. That always helps us. And we'll see you in the woods or on the water.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Connecting with Conservation podcast. Please do us a favor and tell your buddies, friends, family, and others about what you've learned here today. If you like what you heard, come on back anytime and listen to another episode of the Connecting with Conservation podcast.